As of the end of the Wano arc, the story has officially entered the final saga, and the three cornerstone antagonists of this saga will undoubtedly be Akainu, who serves as the head of the Marines, Emu, who is the king of the world, and Blackbeard, who will serve as the greatest pirate adversary for Luffy. Oda has even said that the series will be over once the One Piece is found, which has had some people speculating whether or not Blackbeard will be the final antagonist of the story. Typically in Battle Shonen, the final villain is one of, if not the strongest in the series, and in a series like One Piece where power is determined a lot by one's strength of will, Blackbeard definitely fits the mold of a potential ultimate powerhouse. But before we delve into the rise of Blackbeard, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy content like this, and as always, your support is much appreciated. Even before becoming a fruit user, Blackbeard was highlighted to be very strong. In fact, he was so strong that he was able to leave a lasting scar on Shanks after a fight they had in the past. Shanks makes sure to note that he wasn't careless or off guard in order to highlight just how much of a threat he truly was. We still don't know when this fight took place or how strong Shanks was at the time, but Shanks was still convinced based on his memory of Blackbeard that he'd be too much for Ace to deal with. It would be consistent if Blackbeard was at the very least somewhat relative to Ace before his fruit, as Ace deemed him fit enough to be the 2nd Division commander, even though he was still hiding his true ambitions and ability. For more on Ace and his scaling, I have done a focused video covering him, which I definitely recommend. Anyways, this is why I find it weird when some people consider Blackbeard a devil fruit merchant, as he was clearly portrayed to be a competent fighter without one. In fact, Blackbeard is the first character to mention Haki by name in this series and showcases his ability to sense Luffy's power on 2 separate occasions pre-timeskip. Shanks even determined Blackbeard as a threat that will one day strive for Whitebeard's seat as number 1 by his own will, which essentially gives him the portrayal of a conqueror despite some questionable moments he may have. After becoming the user of the Darkness Fruit, Blackbeard was convinced that he was the strongest in the world. It granted him the ability of gravitational force similar to a black hole, which can attract and crush its targets. The Darkness Fruit also has the unique ability to target and pull in the bodies of Devil Fruit users and nullify their powers once in contact with them. Since the darkness sucks everything into Blackbeard, it also amplifies the amount of pain that is felt from attacks, which was demonstrated in the fight against Ace. Despite having some difficulty against Ace, Blackbeard was able to get a decisive win and used Ace to become a warlord. By using his privileges as a warlord, Blackbeard infiltrated Impel Down and was faced by Magellan. After announcing himself, the Blackbeard pirates were instantly hit by Magellan's poison Hydra, which would have killed them over time if it wasn't for Shiryu, who arrived with the antidote. Quite the moment for the so-called strongest man in the world, but anyway. Shiryu figures that Blackbeard had underestimated Magellan, so you could argue if Blackbeard wasn't careless, he wouldn't have got blitzed, but I'll leave that for you guys to decide. Shiryu would then join Blackbeard's crew, and typically the captain is the strongest fighter. However, it's important to note that Shiryu is said to be Magellan's equal, so you could argue for a brief time Shiryu was actually the strongest Blackbeard pirate until Blackbeard got a 2nd fruit. It's said in Shiryu's Vivid Card entry that he joined the crew because Blackbeard is a type that would allow him to exercise his bloodlust, which doesn't necessarily imply he considers Blackbeard to be stronger than him. It's also stated in Shiryu's Vivid Card entry that he considers Magellan as one to be feared, so even though they are on the same level, Magellan is probably a little stronger than him, or you could say the poison is something Shiryu fears. Personally, I consider these 3 to be relative to one another at this point in the story, with Magellan being a little stronger than Shiryu, and Blackbeard could be placed either just above or just below Shiryu. Blackbeard would then leapfrog his former self by a substantial amount after eating the Tremor Fruit. In fact, Blackbeard claims that the power that surged in his body felt like he could do anything he wanted to the world. The Tremor Fruit is said to be one of the strongest Paramecia fruits, and it's no weaker than a Logia type, which is the strongest type of Devil Fruit. Due to having the power of both earthquakes and darkness, Blackbeard believed that he had now become the strongest man in the world. If you haven't noticed, Blackbeard seems to be convinced that he's the strongest once he acquires a new significant power. It's also emphasized in the Blue Deep Databook that this was Blackbeard's claim rather than an objective statement. There's also statements such as in Databook Green and Deep Blue that talk about the control of the darkness and Tremor Fruit being the strongest, but some conflate this or misinterpret it to mean that Blackbeard himself is the strongest overall. The latter interpretation wouldn't even be consistent, as Blackbeard admitted that it was still too early to face Shanks, and he also said he wasn't ready for Akainu. Not only that, but it stated in Van Auger's Vibricard entry that he quickly detects the presence of a formidable enemy and prevents the crew from being in danger, which was in reference to this very scene. It seems that Blackbeard's boast stemmed from being high on the power of Whitebeard's fruit, as well as the fact that he tends to overestimate himself and gets careless. A year later, the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates led by Marco had a battle with the Blackbeard pirates known as the Grudge War. The Whitebeard remnants suffered an overwhelming defeat in the battle, which crowned Blackbeard as an Emperor of the Sea. Shortly after this, the Blackbeard pirates would run into Kuzan at a random bar in the New World. Kuzan had easily frozen San Juan Wolf, Vasco Shot, Doc Q and Stronger as they tried to attack him. After a little bonding between Kuzan and Blackbeard, Lafitte suggested they steal Kuzan's fruit, however he was overheard. Kuzan got angry and wanted to take out the whole crew. However, Blackbeard calmed him down and convinced Kuzan to join them. It could be argued that since Kuzan technically became Blackbeard's subordinate, that he's definitively weaker than the captain. However, just like the Shiryu acquisition, the reason Kuzan joined was only due to an alignment of interests, and he was still a free man despite being under the Blackbeard banner. Despite losing to Akainu, Kuzan was strong enough to have a 10-day battle against him that was almost equally matched. Akainu was strong enough to match Whitebeard's power while both of them were suppressed, and Whitebeard was regarded as the strongest man in the world, at least in terms of raw power. The Magma Fruit is stated in Akainu's Vibricard entry to be on the highest tier of offensive power, and Kuzan's power was able to contend against it for 10 days. Whether or not Blackbeard is slightly stronger or weaker than Kuzan, he would still be on this level where he can match the power of the former strongest, especially considering they have the same Devil Fruit. A year after this, Blackbeard's first issued bounty was unveiled in the Wano arc, and it stood at 2.2476 billion, and then it would later increase not long after this to a whopping 3.96 billion. It's not actually stated what Blackbeard did to increase his bounty in this time, but lore assumes that the commanders had bounty increases due to becoming fruit users, so maybe Blackbeard got an increase by default. Either way, Blackbeard's most prominent fight post timeskip as of this recording is his fight versus Law. Despite being caught by Law's shock will, he was still able to endure the attack, which is impressive as the likes of Big Mom was very wary of the shockwave based attack. Van Auger also says that charging in with no plan was the reason Blackbeard got hit, which is another showcase of his careless nature. Blackbeard could also clash with Law's crew with a quake, then presumably ended the fight after pulling Law into the Black Vortex. In general, it's not clear just how much Blackbeard even tried against Law, and considering he opened the fight with a quake that didn't even knock some of the Heart Pirates off their feet, doesn't make it seem like he used a majority of his power. Either way, the fight was off screen after the Black Vortex, but when we do return to the fight, Law had already been defeated, and by the looks of things, it's fair to say that Blackbeard had a comfortable victory. Prior to all this, Blackbeard invaded Amazon Lily, and some may consider Rayleigh being able to ward off Blackbeard from Boa Hancock as a bad look, but Rayleigh still admitted that he would have lost if he fought Blackbeard head on. Even in his old age, Rayleigh is strong enough to hold off Admiral Kizaru to protect the Straw Hats, to the point that Kizaru later captured 500 pirates to vent his rage. So in no way is this moment meant to downplay Blackbeard's power, but rather is just hyping up Rayleigh's reputation and stature. As a result of beating Law, Blackbeard has 3 of the 4 road poneglyphs, which means he's in competition with Luffy and Shanks for the final one to become Pirate King. In the new era, the Pirate King, or the King of the Sea, is represented by the one who wins the Throne Wars. Once upon a time, Roger held the position, then it was taken up by Whitebeard, who stood by the throne, and essentially prevented any pirates from rising to the top. This is part of the reason Whitebeard was considered to be the closest to One Piece and the strongest man in the world. It's only after his death when the top position became vacant, which led to the Throne Wars. It's also said that in order to become Pirate King, one must trounce the Yonko and the Admirals. The only one to actually beat an Emperor as of this recording is Luffy, so in order for Blackbeard to narratively be on that pedestal, he would have to beat an Emperor too, which will presumably be Shanks. This could actually happen relatively soon if that's what Oda was alluding to in his Jump Festa 2023 comments. I say that all to say that Blackbeard still has a major hurdle left before he will become Luffy's strongest pirate adversary. Even Blackbeard's bounty may actually reflect his progression until his final bounty that will signify his peak, which I personally believe will be in the 5 billions. As you all know, Blackbeard is named after the real life Blackbeard, whose name was Edward Teach. Edward is Whitebeard's first name, so Oda used the real life Blackbeard to name these two characters. Whitebeard was once the strongest man, and Blackbeard once admired him more than anyone. Blackbeard also named his ship the Saber of Xebec, which could imply connections to Rock's T. Xebec or research that Blackbeard may have done on him. It also seems that Blackbeard has the same ambition as Xebec, which is another layer to unpack. Either way, these connections that Blackbeard has with two pirates that were once the strongest pirates seem deliberate by Oda, down to the structure of the Blackbeard pirates pretty much being the same as Whitebeard's. On top of the fact that his fight with Luffy will determine the King of the Sea in the new era, which means that Blackbeard at least becoming the strongest pirate if not the strongest man is pretty much inevitable. The connections to Whitebeard and Xebec may lead to Blackbeard reaching their level or potentially surpassing them in order to facilitate Luffy's growth into the man that will surpass the former Pirate King. That's all for this topic, so if you enjoyed, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. Join the Discord, the link to which will be in the description below. I've been the one and only Zage, and until next time.